The security guard blocked a 12-year-old indigenous boy from entering the museum exhibition, unaware that the boy's grandmother was the artist behind every masterpiece inside. For Kai Ajig, a lanky 12-year-old with copper skin and jet-black hair pulled into a traditional braid, this wasn't just a museum visit. It was his first time seeing his grandmother's artwork displayed in a major exhibition. He stood at the entrance of the Westbrook Museum of Contemporary Art, his worn sneakers barely crossing the threshold, eyes wide with anticipation as he gazed at the banner above, Reclaiming Heritage. The Art of Nima Ajig. Inside his weathered messenger bag were his sketchbooks, a set of charcoal pencils, a slightly crushed granola bar, and a folded note from his grandmother. See with your heart first, little wolf. Art speaks truths that words cannot. His grandmother, Nima Ajig, had written it just before sending him ahead while she finished a last-minute interview. Nima was the celebrated artist whose works filled the exhibition hall, though few would recognize her in her simple linen clothes and silver-streaked hair. She was a quiet force, not the spotlight-seeking kind. She had arranged to enter through the staff entrance later, wanting Kai to experience the exhibition on his own terms first. There had been concerns about the museum's treatment of indigenous visitors, subtle things, hard to document, impossible to ignore. Kai didn't know all that. He just knew his pulse quickened as he approached the entrance. He stepped forward when the line moved, holding out his special exhibition pass with both hands. The security guard at the entrance, Victor Harmon, mid-40s, with a rigid posture and a name tag polished to a shine, didn't look at the name on the pass. He just looked at Kai. "You here with an adult?" he asked, his tone professionally distant. "No, sir. I'm visiting alone," Kai said clearly. "My grandmother arranged it. I have a special pass." Victor frowned, glancing at the paper without reading it. "You sure you're at the right exhibition, kid? This is a high-profile art show, not the Children's Science Center." "Yes, I know. It's the Nima Ajig exhibition. I'm here to see it." Victor didn't scan the pass. "Do you have a guardian with you?" Kai hesitated. "She's coming later. She had an interview." "These people," Victor muttered under his breath, "always bending the rules." Kai froze. "What?" Victor didn't repeat it. Instead, he held the pass at arm's length, examining it like a counterfeit bill. "You can't just print something off the internet and expect to enter a restricted exhibition, son." "It's real. The curator sent it personally. My name's on the list," Kai insisted. "I've seen this before," Victor said, cutting him off. "Fake passes, kids trying to sneak in for free. You'd be surprised what some people try to pull." "Some what people?" Kai asked, his voice suddenly small. Victor looked at him, then really looked, and for the first time, there was no professional courtesy, not even a pretense of it. "I'm going to have to confiscate this." He tore the exhibition pass clean in half. Kai gasped. People in line behind him shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, but no one intervened. "There," Victor said. "Now wait over there. I'll get someone to sort this out." "I didn't do anything wrong," Kai said, tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. "You're causing a scene," Victor said sharply. "Don't make this difficult." Kai looked around. No one met his eyes. Even the woman with the gallery brochure who'd smiled at him earlier turned away. Victor raised his voice. "Security supervisor, please. We have a situation." A younger guard nearby, Layla, maybe early 30s, with warm brown skin and a questioning expression, hesitated. "He's on the list," she said gently. "I checked him in myself when he arrived. Everything matched." Victor shot her a glare. "Did you verify ID? He's what, 12? He doesn't look 12. Layla blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" Victor didn't answer. He crossed his arms. Kai reached into his pocket and clutched the note from his grandmother. He didn't read it, just held it like a talisman against the growing knot in his stomach. The security supervisor appeared, a tall woman with close-cropped hair and a tablet in hand. She glanced at Kai, then at Victor. "What's happening here?" "Possible counterfeit exhibition pass," Victor said. "No guardian. He's being uncooperative." "I'm not," Kai whispered. The supervisor crouched slightly to Kai's level. "Name?" "Kai Ajig," he replied. She tapped on her tablet and scrolled. After a moment, her expression shifted. "Ajig? As in Nima Ajig? Yes, ma'am. That's my grandmother, Kai said. She stood upright. He's on the VIP list, special access, approved by the curator herself. Pass was completely valid, shouldn't have been torn. Victor paled slightly. That can't be right. It is, the supervisor said firmly. The boy is cleared. The pass was legitimate. Layla stepped forward again. He followed all protocols. I verified everything at the main desk. Victor looked like he might argue, but then something else happened. A voice, strong and melodic, called out from beyond the security barrier. Is there a reason my grandson isn't inside the exhibition? The crowd parted. Nima Ajig walked forward, not with anger, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had faced such moments too many times before. Not with fire, but with stone. Victor stiffened. I wasn't informed. You weren't meant to be, Nima replied. I wanted him to experience the museum as any other visitor would. I wanted to see how he'd be treated when no one was watching. Kai stepped toward his grandmother, tears finally spilling. My pass was fake, Kai said. He said people like me tried to sneak in. Nima's face remained composed. She just looked at Victor. Did you read his name? No, but... Did you scan the barcode? I didn't think I needed to. You didn't think? Nima said. You assumed. Victor folded his arms. I've been doing security for 15 years. And that's how long your bias has had room to grow, Nima interrupted. The entrance hall grew still. A man nearby cleared his throat. I saw everything. That young man was polite, respectful. He did nothing to warrant suspicion. Victor's face flushed. I didn't know who he was. That's precisely the problem, Nima said. It shouldn't matter who he is. The supervisor tapped something into her tablet. Sir, we'll need a full incident report. I'm requesting the museum director join us immediately. Kai still held the torn pass in his hands. Nima gently reached out, covering his fingers with hers. We'll get another one, she said softly. But he looked at me like I didn't belong here, Kai whispered. I know, little wolf, she said. I know. He said I didn't look 12. Nima's eyes narrowed. I'll be addressing this, she said, and in that moment, everyone knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Nima stood with one hand on her grandson's shoulder, the other still holding her worn leather portfolio, as the entrance hall crowd pretended not to watch. But they were watching. Phones were emerging from pockets and purses. Screens dimly lit as fingers hovered over camera apps. A few people had already started recording discreetly. The security supervisor had stepped aside, now quietly speaking into her radio. Layla, the younger guard, stood with her arms crossed, positioning herself near Kai like a silent ally. Nima didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She looked at Victor as if expecting him to fill the silence with an apology, but none came. The guard's arms remained crossed, jaw clenched like he'd swallowed something bitter and refused to acknowledge it. The museum director arrived moments later, early 50s, black, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, with a walk that suggested she'd handled crises before but rarely in full public view. Her name tag read Dr. Amara Chisholm, Executive Director. She surveyed the scene, eyes moving deliberately from the torn pass in Kai's hand to Victor's defensive posture to Nima's unshakable calm. I'm Amara Chisholm, she said with measured authority. Can someone explain what's happening here? Nima didn't move. Your security staff accused my grandson of carrying a counterfeit pass. He tore it up in front of him, refused to verify his name or scan the code. My grandson was registered as a VIP guest. Everything was confirmed at the main desk. Dr. Chisholm turned to Victor. Is that accurate? Victor hesitated, eyes flicking to Layla. He approached alone, didn't have ID. I've seen fake passes before. I made a judgment call. Did you verify his name on the list? She asked. No, but... Did you scan the barcode? It didn't look right. But you didn't check? Dr. Chisholm didn't raise her voice either, but it was enough to make Victor look away. Kai shifted slightly, still holding the torn halves of his pass. Nima noticed and reached down gently, taking them from him. Keep these, she said quietly. as a reminder of what we still face. She turned back to Dr. Chisholm. I need this documented. I want a full review of the security footage, with audio included. This wasn't just a procedural error. This was profiling. And I've spent too many years creating art that challenges exactly this kind of prejudice. Dr. Chisholm nodded. Ms. Ojig, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am. This is completely unacceptable. Victor's head snapped up. You're that Nima Ojig? She confirmed with a slight nod. The artist whose work fills your exhibition halls, yes. But today, I'm not here as an artist. I'm here as a grandmother whose grandson was just made to feel like an intruder because of the color of his skin. There was no applause, no dramatic reaction, just a weighted silence, and Victor looked suddenly diminished, not because of who Nima was, but because of how clearly he'd failed. Layla finally spoke up. He did everything right. He was respectful. I verified his status myself at the main desk. He arrived almost an hour early. I remember because he was so excited about seeing the exhibition. Nima gave her a look of gratitude, small but genuine. Dr. Chisholm nodded. Get him a new pass immediately, and I'll initiate a full review. HR will be involved. She turned to Victor. Step away from your post now. Victor opened his mouth like he wanted to protest, but the weight of too many eyes forced him silent. He stepped back, rigid with embarrassment. A staff member hurried over with a new exhibition pass, this one with a special gold border. Kai said nothing. He held Nima's hand tightly, as if letting go might mean slipping back into that terrible moment again. Nima knelt beside him, adjusting his braid gently. Are you still okay to see the exhibition? Kai nodded slowly, his voice small. Yeah, I didn't like how he looked at me, like I was trying to trick him, like I wasn't supposed to be here. Nima didn't answer right away. She stood up and looked through the glass doors where her artwork waited, canvases filled with color and memory and resistance. He looked at you and saw his fear, not your truth. That's his limitation, not yours. They walked together toward the exhibition entrance. The new staff member smiled as she handed over the special pass. We've upgraded him to a curator's circle pass, Miss Ojig. I'm deeply sorry for what happened. Nima accepted the pass without reacting. Upgrades don't fix what was broken. What fixes it is remembering that next time you see a child standing alone, you check your assumptions before you check their credentials. The staff member nodded quietly, eyes downcast. Nima squeezed Kai's shoulder. Ready to see my paintings? Kai nodded. I'll look for the stories in them. As they walked into the exhibition space, the whispers in the entrance hall grew louder, but no one said anything to Nima directly. She didn't need them to. Her grandson had been hurt, humiliated, and while this particular wound might fade, the memory would remain not visible, but carried. Inside the gallery, a docent greeted Kai warmly. Welcome to the exhibition. We have a special tour for family members of the artist. Would you like to join? Kai blinked. Really? Absolutely. The curator would be honored to give you a personal tour. Kai looked back once. Nima was still standing by the entrance, watching. Kai smiled slightly and followed the docent deeper into the gallery. Nima remained there for a moment longer. She wasn't looking at her artwork. She was staring at the security desk where Victor had stood, where her grandson had been judged in an instant not because he was late, not because he broke a rule, but because he simply didn't look like someone who belonged. Nima took out her phone and opened her notes app. She typed quickly, Museum Incident Report, Racial Profiling Involving Indigenous Minor, Security Footage Requested. Recommend mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all frontline staff. Immediate evaluation of security protocols. She paused, then added, This one matters beyond myself. Across the entrance hall, Dr. Chisholm stood talking with Layla, voice low. Victor hadn't returned. He wouldn't not today. HR would handle the next steps. Nima didn't care about the paperwork. What mattered was the disruption, the crack in the pattern, the moment when silence didn't win when someone, Layla, the man in the crowd, even the supervisor chose to speak. That's where change began, not with outrage, but with courage. Inside the exhibition, Kai stood before a massive canvas, sketchbook now open for the first time. The painting before him showed a figure behind a desk, no name, no specific features. Just an ordinary face behind a barrier of glass. Kai wrote 3 words in his sketchbook in careful letters: "See me first." The exhibition space hummed with visitors. Somewhere in the contemporary wing, a tour guide's voice carried through the halls, calm and knowledgeable, pointing out the significance of Nima's use of color and symbolism. Kai wasn't listening. He sat on a bench in Gallery 3, legs crossed beneath him, sketchbook balanced on his lap, charcoal sliding quietly across the page. His drawing wasn't of the paintings or sculptures, but of a doorway, half closed. At the threshold, the silhouette of a small boy, no name, no face, just waiting. The memory of the entrance hall still clung to him, not as a shout, but as a feeling, that sharp weight in his chest when people looked through him. He didn't want revenge. He didn't even want an apology. He just wanted to understand why someone could look at a quiet, respectful 12-year-old and immediately decide something was wrong. The bench beside him held his water bottle and a small folded note, hand-delivered by a different staff member, one with kind eyes and a gentle voice, who bent slightly to whisper. "This came from the director. She said it was for your grandmother." Kai opened it, even though it wasn't addressed to him. He read the elegant handwriting inside. "Ms. Ajig, we're initiating a full review of security interactions across all departments. I know a formal apology isn't enough, but we will do better. Dr. Amara Chisholm." He smiled faintly. It didn't erase what happened, but it helped. Meanwhile, Nima walked through her own exhibition, moving from canvas to canvas, not as the celebrated artist, but as an observer, watching how others engaged with her work. She paused before a painting titled "The Invisible Crown," which showed a young indigenous boy standing tall, a ghostly headdress of eagle feathers hovering above him, unseen by the crowd surrounding him. She'd painted it 3 years ago, after Kai had come home from school in tears because a teacher had told him his traditional story was just a myth. Now, it hung in a major museum, forcing people to see what they'd been trained to overlook. An older white woman approached, standing beside Nima without recognizing her. "Powerful, isn't it?" the woman said. "Makes you wonder how many kings we pass by without noticing." Nima nodded. "That's exactly the point." Back in the contemporary wing, a middle-aged indigenous man in a worn denim jacket noticed Kai sketching and sat down nearby. "You've got a good hand," he said quietly. "Strong lines." Kai looked up, surprised. "Thank you." The man nodded toward Kai's sketchbook. "You an artist too?" "I'm trying to be. My grandmother is Nima Ajig." The man's eyes widened slightly. "No kidding? Her work changed how I see myself. I'm a teacher now, art history at the community college." He paused, then added, "I heard what happened at the entrance. You handled it with dignity." Kai looked down at his drawing again, then back at the man. "My grandmother says we have to be twice as dignified to be treated half as respectfully." The man smiled sadly. "She's right. But she also teaches us to keep making art anyway, to keep telling our stories. That's its own kind of power." They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. The gallery settled into its usual hushed reverence, soft footsteps, whispered observations, the occasional click of a phone camera despite the "no photography" signs. Kai finished his sketch and turned the page. He began to draw the museum's grand entrance, but this time he drew his grandmother standing on the other side of the security barrier, straight-backed, gentle-eyed. Behind her, the outline of her most famous painting, and above her head, the words, "I belong here." Near the end of their visit, Nima found her grandson in the final gallery. Kai looked up. "Grandmother." "Little Wolf, what do you think of the exhibition?" Kai gestured to the painting before him, a canvas filled with intertwined hands of different colors. "This one's my favorite. It feels like it's moving." Nima leaned in, studying her own work as if seeing it anew. "It is. Everything is." Kai hesitated. "Do you think they'll fire him?" Nima sat beside him on the bench. "I don't know. Do you want them to?" Kai looked back down at his sketchbook. "No. I want him to remember what he did. I want him to learn." People don't learn when you just remove them. They learn when they're made to see what they couldn't see before. Nima smiled just a little. "That's wisdom beyond your years." It's what your art teaches. They began walking toward the exit, passing through galleries filled with Nima's lifetime of work, canvases that challenged perceptions, sculptures that reclaimed narratives, installations that demanded attention. Dr. Chisholm waited near the main entrance. Ms. Ojig, before you leave, I wanted to personally apologize again and let you know that we're taking immediate action. Victor has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Nima nodded. And the broader issue? We're implementing mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all staff, reviewing our security protocols, and establishing a community advisory board to help us address systemic issues. Good, Nima said. But remember that policies without changed hearts are just words on paper. Dr. Chisholm nodded. I understand. We have a long way to go. Outside the museum, Nima and Kai stood on the wide stone steps, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the plaza. Kai looked back at the building, its imposing columns and glass doors now seeming less intimidating. Will you come back? He asked his grandmother. Of course, Nima replied. Our stories belong in these spaces, even when they try to keep us out. That evening, in her studio on the outskirts of the city, Nima sat at her workbench with the skyline visible through tall windows. Her inbox was full. Messages from galleries, interview requests, speaking invitations. Nima ignored them for now. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out the torn exhibition pass, still creased and fragile. She placed it on the table beside Kai's sketchbook, which he had given her before going to bed. Nima flipped through the pages, smiling at the architectural sketches, the animal studies, and the words that appeared throughout. See me first, and I belong here. One page caught her attention, a simple drawing of two hands, one adult and one child. The child's hand held a torn piece of paper, while the adult's hand offered a new one. She stared at that page for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it reminded her of what was worth fighting for. 3 days later, Nima sat in a small conference room at the Westbrook Museum. The walls were adorned with student artwork, bright and hopeful. Across from her sat Victor Harmon, noticeably different than at the entrance, shoulders slumped, uniform replaced by a plain button-down shirt, eyes downcast. Nima had requested this meeting. No lawyers, no HR representatives, no audience, just a conversation, a human one. The door closed behind them and the room fell silent. Nima didn't begin with accusations. She didn't need to. She looked at Victor not as an artist confronting a security guard, but as a human being confronting a mirror. I didn't ask for this meeting to see you punished, she said, her voice steady and clear. That's not why I'm here. Victor's eyes lifted, surprised. You didn't? I asked for this time to find out if you understand what you did, not what the policy manual says, not what your training says, but what you did to my grandson and why it matters. Victor opened his mouth, then closed it again. He stared at the table. I thought I was doing my job. You weren't, Nima replied, still calm. You didn't check his name. You didn't scan his pass. You didn't treat him like a child who deserved respect. You treated him like a threat, a problem, and the only reason you questioned yourself is because you learned his last name. Victor flinched. I didn't intend to. That's not enough, Nima said, cutting gently. Not intending harm doesn't undo the damage. Not intending it doesn't erase the look in his eyes when he asked me why you saw him that way. A long silence stretched between them. Outside the window, visitors moved across the museum plaza, tiny figures from this height. Victor finally spoke. I've been working security for almost 16 years. You see things, people trying to scam free entry, kids showing up with fake passes, fake stories. I guess I stopped looking closely. Nima nodded. That's the problem. You stopped seeing people. You started seeing categories. He's 12. He waited in line. He handed you his pass and you didn't even give him a chance. Victor's voice was rough. He reminded me of someone, a kid who once tried to sneak in with a counterfeit ticket. It caused problems. It got messy. Maybe I overreacted. You didn't overreact, Nima said. You overassumed. She paused, then leaned in. Let's not pretend race and heritage didn't play a role in that assumption. Victor's face reddened, but he didn't argue. He didn't deny it. Nima let the moment settle before continuing. You have a disciplinary record now. There will be required training, sensitivity workshops, a performance review. That's out of my hands. What isn't out of my hands is this: what you take from this moment and how you carry it forward. Victor looked up, eyes troubled but dry. He was so calm. He whispered. I expected him to argue, to get defensive, but he just stood there like he already knew no one would believe him. Nima's chest tightened, because that's the world we've raised him in. They sat for a few more minutes, saying little. Then Nima stood. I'm not here for retribution. I'm here because I believe people can change, but it starts with acknowledgement. You don't get to forget this. You carry it, and maybe the next time a child like Kai stands in front of you, you'll remember what it felt like to see him clearly for the first time. Victor nodded slowly. I will. Nima walked out without shaking his hand, not out of resentment, but because some moments don't call for closure, they call for reflection. Later that week, Nima received an email from Kai's art teacher. He's flourishing. The teacher wrote, he gave a presentation yesterday about art as resistance and the power of being seen. I think he's going to change the world. Nima smiled as she read the message, her hand resting lightly on the folded exhibition pass still tucked into her desk drawer. That night, Kai called from his bedroom. Grandmother, can you come see something? Nima found him sitting cross-legged on his bed, a large canvas propped against the wall. It showed the museum entrance, rendered in bold strokes of color. But instead of a security barrier, there was an open doorway filled with light. Standing in the threshold was a figure not clearly indigenous or white or any specific race, just a human waiting to be seen. It's beautiful, Nima said. What are you calling it? Kai thought for a moment. The invisible crown. Nima's eyes widened slightly. Like my painting. Yes, Kai said, but in mine, the crown isn't invisible anymore. See? He pointed to a subtle shimmer of gold leaf around the figure's head, catching the light only when viewed from certain angles. Do you think people will see it? Nima asked. Some will, Kai replied, the ones who are really looking. 2 weeks later, the Westbrook Museum unveiled a new community exhibition in their education wing. The centerpiece was Kai's painting hung beside Nima's original The Invisible Crown. A small plaque between them told the story of what had happened at the entrance, not as an accusation, but as an invitation to see differently. On opening night, Nima noticed something unexpected. Victor stood in the back of the gallery, not in uniform, but in civilian clothes, studying the paintings with genuine attention. Their eyes met briefly across the room. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude. Nima returned the nod, then turned back to her grandson, who was explaining his technique to an enthralled group of young art students. That night, as they walked to the car, Kai pointed to a new banner hanging from the museum facade. It featured an image from Nima's exhibition and bold text that read, All belong here. Your work did that, Kai said. No, Nima replied. Our story did that. Kai was quiet for a moment. Do you think it will last? The change? Nima looked back at the museum, its windows glowing in the evening darkness. Change is never finished, little wolf. It's a painting we keep adding to, layer by layer, generation after generation. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the torn exhibition pass mended now with gold thread in the Japanese kintsugi tradition, making the break part of its beauty, and handed it to Kai. Keep this, she said, not to remember the hurt, but to remember your power. The power to enter spaces that weren't built for us and transform them with your presence. Kai took the mended pass and tucked it carefully into his sketchbook. As they drove home through the city streets, he looked out at the passing buildings and thought about all the invisible crowns around him, all the kings and queens walking unrecognized, waiting for someone to truly see them. And he knew, with the certainty that comes from both pain and healing, that he would spend his life learning to see them, to paint them, to make their crowns visible to a world too quick to judge, too slow to understand. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Because sometimes the most powerful art isn't what hangs on a wall, but what changes in a heart.